Hey everybody, welcome back. Look, we are all in equal-sized framing for videos, and we're talking about Illuminations. As you can see, my other co-hosts are super excited about this. I'm also super excited. I have mine on my iPad though. Couldn't find one in time, but this was Karen's pick and a repeat author as well. The last time we read, is it Sharratt? One of her books. Last time we read one of her books, it was Ecstasy, and it was on the like the story and the life of Alma Mahler. And we also really liked that book too. It was a little bit different though, because she was a central character in Mahler's life, but she wasn't herself a musician. But she was caught in between this world of music and the turmoil of her husband. This time around,
wasn't Alma a composer?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. I mixed it up with the different characters. Yes, she was a composer. And this time around is interesting because there is no other composer. Like Hildegard is the composer, and we'll talk about this book in more detail. But it's really interesting, actually centralizing on a person where it's not like they're not in someone else's shadow, quote unquote, in terms of music and creative artistry. It's just her and her inspiration, and the issue was literally at that time the misogyny and the traditions and the cultures of the time, not another composer imposing their form of music, telling them that they should be other, like Earl, for example, or other or Fanny Mendelssohn, like that, other characters. So very interesting book. Karen, how did you find this book?
How did, find it as in?
Like how did you just kind of stumble upon it?
Come across it? I think after reading Ecstasy, I went and looked up to see what other books she had. And then I got way too excited that she had one on Hildegard, because I talk about Hildegard at school, but I didn't actually know a lot about her. So that's what I love about this. Like you were saying, that she is basically the composer. She is the main character, but you get the insight into her whole ridiculous life. Like you get the context, and I never had that. So this is very enlightening.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised, I will say. Because same with you, like I've taught Hildegard. We've learned about Hildegard. And it's like one of those things where, unfortunately, with our music history classes and stuff, it's like, this person's important, one song. This person's important, one song. This person's important, one song. And you're like, but why are they important? Like they just get literally one paragraph. And you're like, that's really sucks, because it doesn't give you a chance. So many, music history is so dominated by classical romantic that we just kind of shun Baroque and a lot of the other ones, and we shun the 20th century a lot of times, right? Because if you look at history books, it's mostly late 1600s to mid 1800s, and it's this much, and then Baroque and Rococo and Renaissance and Middle Ages is this small. And it's so cool because Hildegard was supposed to was one of those characters look, she's a lady, she's really cool, and then nothing.
It's almost like she's in there because it's look, a lady composer.
It's one of the boxes to check off.
It's the same thing with how historians treat Clara Schumann, right? It's just oh, she's a really good pianist, second only to Liszt, and then nothing. Right? I was like, you're an asshole. Second only Liszt. But it's they would only do that for ladies, and we will talk about white old European men controlling music one day. But for today, this book, I guess let's just go across the board and let's just quickly talk about our feelings. Amanda, do you want to start first?
Okay. You know what? Between Ecstasy and this one, I love this author. I actually have another one of her books right here, that I will read later. But there's something about the way that she writes that really kind of pulls you in. And as a music student, when you hear the words of Hildegard, you're like, oh yeah, that lady. I know she's important, but whatever. but there's the way that she writes and the way that I love this book. I'll just leave it at that. I thought this was great. We'll talk about all the other stuff later because I'm getting ahead of myself.
We will get into it. I mean, Karen, what about you?
I adored this book, and if I had to choose between Ecstasy and Illuminations, I'd have to pick this one. And I don't know if it's because I'm like a little bit more emotionally attached because I started reading this when I was in the hospital after giving birth to my little daughter Eleanor. And so it was like I started reading it, and I'm like, oh, I'm emotionally attached because I love Hildegard, but then also baby. Like it was just a lot of emotions.
Yeah.
But I think truly this one, there would be sentences that I would read again. I would read a sentence and I would go, that is just poetry. And I would read it again, and I would flag it, and I would write it down. And like this book just read so lusciously.
Mm-hmm. That's a good word.
Yeah.
That's a good word for it. Very just like accurate for this book.
Yeah.
Poon?
I guess I'll go. Yeah. I read this very fast, and I'm not a very fast reader. And I just caught myself like there was never it was never a situation where like the cliffhangers were kind of like forced in.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were crafted. Like I never felt like I was being quote unquote strung along. I just felt like, oh, it's just a story. Like even to the point where like 7 years will go by and I was like, I would think, oh, what happened? Oh, I don't care. Just keep going. Like there was a flow that I was like, yeah, like the idea of this whole like, I don't want to know what she did every single day. The reason why she probably didn't want to write that was because like we're gonna like time just passes. Time passes. It continues going. It flows, right? And you know, I love that ebb and flow of the time. Whereas I think a lot of books, even nowadays, the troubles is there's so much detail with like the day to day.
Yeah.
Right. That it gets really bogged down with details. This one, it was like, well, you can just assume that they were doing the same thing for 7 years.
Yeah.
Because I've told you they were doing the same thing for 7 years, and that, for me that's why I never dwelled to like I was like, oh, I wanted more of that. There was always like, okay, I've gotten enough, this is great, and then that context helped me to move forward to the next section, which could be months or years, and it didn't matter. It like this was the first time where I didn't care that it was years went by, months went by, because it just flowed so well that I didn't even notice. Because like she'll be like, oh, I'm 35 now. I was like, wait, she was like 24.
But she slips it in like the very last chunk. She's like, oh yeah, and then this happened. It's 1179. I'm like, oh, 9 years passed. Okay, cool. All right.
No, it's insane. So like I said, I don't normally read books really quick, and this was not like I was rushing through it. I would read and I was like, oh, it's been an hour. I should probably stop, right? But it flowed. It was so easy to read. And I totally agree with you, Karen. I would pick Illuminations over Ecstasy.
Yeah. And you remember things. That's the thing. Like normally, sometimes if I read chunks, even if I'm really into it, I'll forget certain details like by the next time I pick it up. But this one, I'm like, I'll pick it up. I'm like, oh, but this happened to this character. And this happened in the beginning. And then this was this. Like a way that the characters were more memorable.
Yes.
And I feel like I would remember these characters more than the characters in Ecstasy. And I wonder if because it is about Hildegard, because we didn't learn very much about Hildegard.
I was gonna say, I feel like it probably has to do with Hildegard. Like, I mean, let's just jump into the
fascinating as a person. Holy crap! But like, wow.
I want to say one of the things I really appreciated was the fact that every character was still described in some sort of detail where you still made them memorable. Like even Kuno, that I know Amanda hates, we knew who he was, how he grew up. And the reason why is because Hildegard really cared about every single person around her life. So it would make sense for us to have more details about every single person around her life because she cared for every single one of them. Right? That's why we had so much detail about the upbringings of the girls. None of the girls like were nameless girls. We knew where they came from,
that's true.
Dowries, what type of houses they came from, who they were allied with, and who they were friends with, and who got along with whoever. And even down to like, I mean, I know I'm jumping to the very end, but just talking about Hildegard, like the way that she knew you're going to be this virtue, you're going to be this virtue.
Yeah.
Like, she knew every single person. And I think that really helped with like the author being allowed to describe other characters, because sometimes when you center on one character, you only care about them, right? But for this one, she spent her whole life wanting to care for everybody else.
Yeah.
And for me, it just made logical sense that through her character, she would know all of this about every single person.
And I think it's a feat because this book isn't very long. It's like mine's like 270 pages, right? So to have such detailed of character in so many characters in only so many pages, it's quite an impressive feat, because you could probably go on pages about like how Yuta, you know, where she came from, what her family is like, all this other kind of stuff. But you have this really kind of good idea of her, even though it wasn't like pages and pages of description. It was like built around with the way that Hildegard acted and stuff that she said that kind of added to the character and your idea of her. So craftfully done, Ms. Sharratt.
I liked how the characters also, they were very three-dimensional, you know, like I don't know how to say her name, Juta.
I think it's Jutta. Yeah.
I thought it was Yuta because Eastern European-ish.
Yeah.
So Yuta, you know, you understand why the way that she is.
Yeah.
But you're still kind of like, oh, you're so frustrating, but also like we have sympathy for you, and you're so tragic, and it just adds to that whole character. And each character has that level of detail.
Yeah.
And that just adds to the whole story.
Yeah, like in our Facebook message, like Amanda was talking about how she really hated Kuno. And I told her, I was like, one of the reasons why I don't hate him as much is because he was humanized in this book, right? He really loved Yuta, and he saw Hildegard as trying to outshine his Yuta, who was his patron saint, right? His saint of his monastery. Yeah. So it made sense why he felt that way, and it made sense why like every single time Hildegard was beginning to, you know, shine brighter and brighter and brighter, he got more and more and more angry, because not only was she outshining Yuta, she was also outshining him. And in a world where men kind of controlled everything, right? Like I said, I don't agree with it, but I understood why.
But at the same time, like Volmar loved Yuta as well. And he's like, but again, Volmar loved everybody. He's like, oh, you need help, I will help you with this. You need help, I'll help you with this. Like I think it was at the very end when Hildegard's like, I saw that like that love that he held for Yuta, and like that he still loved her, but yet he's a good guy. He's still a good guy. Yeah, I don't know. Like it after I thought about it, I agree with you. Like even the characters that you're like, oh, you're such a jerk. Like you felt that sympathy for them as well.
And you understood he was kind of in a tough place too, because if Hildegard left, then all of the money that was propping up the monastery would be gone. And so like he's trying to look out for his business essentially.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it just I thought it was really interesting where he was just like, your ego's getting too big. And I was like, your ego's getting too big.
Yeah, no. I would like to say for Fullamar, I guess, because V's are F's.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, you guys, we're gonna really, really terribly. I'm so sorry. I did not do any research in the names. Fullamar. So I think one of the reasons why he was such a good ally was because he was chastised as being too womanly when he was younger.
True enough. Yes.
That's why he was sent to the church, because he was not masculine enough. So because of that, that's why he was really good at writing things. You know, because it was a more feminine thing to do. So I think because of that, like because he was chastised and he was looked down upon, that's kind of where they had that connection. Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. I don't know. I just like really, I felt so bad for him. Like I loved him. I thought he was probably, aside from Hildegard, he was probably my favorite character was that man. And just the fact that he was an ally to the idea that she wanted to read and she wanted to write and she wanted to compose, and he's like, yup, you should be able to do all of that, like that whole ally of the softer sex at that time. Because realistically, if he's already been chastised, it could have been a completely different story if he was sent there and he's like, yep, well, I'm a man and you're a woman, and nope, you don't get to do any of this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that he did in fact support Hildegard in all these other like masculine things that she wanted to do was really it was just really interesting to read.
Yeah, it was also, sorry.
No, go ahead.
It was also tangentially because he loved Yuta, right?
Yeah.
Because he loved her and Hildegard was sort of in her care.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, I understand, Yuta, that you want to wear the hair shirts, but we should put a 7-year-old in a hair shirt. So let's just like,
yeah,
it's like chill on the torture for the child.
Yeah,
you can do what you want, but also I don't want you to do that. Like it was coming from his love of her.
Yeah.
So there was also that side.
Yeah, it's like it's a different love for Hildegard, because you can see that they do love each other, but it's very much that very
it's familial love, right?
The brother sister love.
Yeah.
Oh, Hildegard was totally into him for a while.
Oh yeah. But he wasn't.
But he wasn't. Yeah. But the cool thing is she never got like the weird little triangle, but she always understood. She's like, his love is for Yuta, but I will always care for him. And I think, obviously in the end, she did kind of, my deepest love for my brother, Fulmar.
Fulmar, yeah.
Fulmar.
We'll just pronounce it whatever we see. It's fine. Why don't we start right at the very beginning in part 1, and let's kind of go from there. So we just talked about Hildegard. So in the story, Hildegard is the 10th child, and at that time, tithing was a big thing. And because she was a 10th child, she would be given to the church as a tithing. I don't know much about the rules behind that, but the youngest son was supposed to be a priest. So that's why Rorik was also given to the church as well, her closest sibling. So she was given over to Yuta because Yuta was the daughter to the Baroness of the town.
Margravine? It's like, yeah.
Oh no, Margravine. That's a Ricardus.
Oh, sorry, that's Ricard. Yeah, sorry, my fault.
I can't remember. Bassam. I think it's Bassam.
Something like that.
And
I have it written down, but go ahead.
Okay, so Yuta wanted to be an anchorite, and I didn't know what that was until this book.
Where did I? I looked at.
I was like, oh, they're going to the monastery. They're going to be like, like the nuns and like Sound of Music. No, they're not.
Like the nuns and Sound of Music.
So essentially what happened was, we don't know, the book kind of leads us to think that Hildegard was given because her mom really wanted the Baroness to pay for her other daughter's dowries, and Yuta needed a handmaiden, essentially, to go into the anchorite life. So, and then Meganhard, the brother, jokes, like says jokes like, oh, you're gonna be like, you're gonna be bricked up forever, and Hildegard's like, ah, ha, 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 and then it becomes true. They are bricked up, right, forever, and that's kind of really where part 1 is. They're in this kind of like really small, like, I can't remember even how they explained it. It was very small. There was a little courtyard that they could go out, but essentially the idea was that the anchorite was to kind of like, quote unquote, anchor the church and support the church by suffering. This version of suffering, and Yuta took it further. She was into self-flagellation
and starvation
and self-deprivation, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
At that time, the most revered form of sacred, sacred, like self-loathing, right? People loved that, right? Because it really showed how you shunned the body for the spiritual and for God and your bridegroom and everything. So at that time when she was doing this, people were really enamored by that, especially the brothers in the monastery, because they were like, she's suffering so much for us, for God and stuff. And it was really interesting because she was a huge juxtaposition to how Hildegard lived, right? Yeah. But that's pretty much part 1 right there.
in a nutshell. Yeah.
And this is also when Hildegard's love of plants begin
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
So it's the juxtaposition, I guess, would be between Yuta, who's shunning life essentially.
Yeah.
And Hildegard is kind of creating it,
Yeah.
nurturing it. So it's a very interesting. I thought that was really cool that they had that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then with the prophet coming and seeing Yuta and being like, your handmaid is gonna outshine you, and she's like, anger, I must flagellate myself more to shine in God's light. It was that part one, and I felt it was tragic in that part one, like watching Yuta self-destruct herself and watching Hildegard being this kid being like, all right, my lady's hitting herself again, and she's on that floor for 12 hours a day and she's not eating, and I'm trying to help her, but she's not taking, like, that helplessness, that because even at that age, she's like, I want to help you and I want to, keep you alive, but you're not allowing me to help you.
Yeah.
So having all those emotions, even in the first chunk of this book, watching these two kind of like fight in their way while imprisoned together.
The thing that I like, sort of an overarching thing, was that Hildegard really disagreed with the fact that she was forced to be an anchorite as a child. She basically had no choice. And I love that she eventually becomes kind of an advocate and saying, I will only take people if they themselves say, I want to do this.
Yeah.
Because it truly is, like, if you think about it, it's truly cruel to lock up a 7-year-old and be like, here, like, hang out with this scary woman, like.
And like sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I was gonna say, in the afterword of the book, that I just couldn't stop reading. In the afterword, apparently there were two conflicting cases where one story was she was bricked up at like 7, and another story was like she went and stayed with Yuta at her house until they were like 14. So I'm like, I'm reading this, I'm like, I can understand either or, but it's interesting that there is no, like actual definitive thing in all the research. So it's kind of a big gap. So like 14, okay, I can see 14 like struggling but kind of dealing with it. But 7 years old, kind of young.
So if that is truly historical, that's terrifying. But for the story, it's
scary.
Yeah. And I think like the her being in like kind of like quote unquote cloistered in at around 7 years old made the storyline leading up to Gouda and Adelheid coming even more tragic. So, backtrack a little bit. This is the Baroness. Baroness is Yuta's mother, and then there is the Margravine. So the Margravine, so Ricardus's mom. She brings her 2 nieces because her 2 nieces, her 2 nieces because her sister has passed on, and she has these 2 daughters, and Hildegard is like, how dare you bring this child here? She's 5. How dare you bring this child here? And the Margravine is like, you don't know what the men will do to her.
Yeah.
And that was the first time where I'm just like, wow. She like Hildegard is speaking from her experience, being like, how dare you rob this child's choice?
Yeah.
But the Margravine is like, you don't understand the real world out there.
Yeah.
She could be wedded at 5. This is the only way I can protect my 2 nieces from the world. And it's just that juxtaposition that I was like, oh, because like on the one hand, you understand why Hildegard is so angry. On the other hand, you also understand she's oblivious to the world outside, right? Yeah. And by doing this, like, so she was thrown in against her will, shut out of freedom. These 2, the only freedom they'll have is being with her.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, I was like, that was so powerful at that moment, right? To have to like, she had to understand that there were different perspectives, the same thing, right? Yeah.
And I think she figured it out because she had the chance. Like the wall came down to put them in, and Rorik's like, let's go. And she's like, I can't leave these two by themselves because wasn't Richard just thrown in there as well? Wasn't there?
No. Richard is later.
Was that later? Okay. So like she had the chance to go, and Rorik's like, it's gonna be open. It's your time to run. And she's like, I can't leave these two with Yuta because Yuta would just destroy them. So with that one line, it kind of changed everything about how those two girls came and kind of why Hildegard stayed. Yeah.
And it's like
it's tragedy.
It's crazy.
So
right?
sad.
It is really sad.
That's why the book is so good. It's because it gives those two different opposing views.
Yeah.
Where you go, oh, I understand your reasoning, but I also understand your because there's no easy answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like everybody, in the end, it's just like everybody's just trying to do the best for everybody else, even though it's not necessarily the best choice. And I guess the hard thing is that, we're reading this in 21st century when we're like, oh yeah, so we would never take a 5-year-old, just throw them into an anchor and like brick them up. But at that time, it does spin that idea as like, oh, this is true. This is the only way that they would be safe. This is from all those other men who's like, oh yeah, your beautiful daughter at 13. I may be 65, but yeah, she's a hottie. We should go get married. Like, scary and gross.
Yeah. I mean, okay.
Different culture, different times. Right?
Different time, I know, but it still happens, I guess, as long as you're 19 and okay.
No. It still happens. Child brides are still a thing in America. But that, I think, like that was the moment where I think she came into herself as like, okay, like she all of a sudden I think it was at the age of like 17. Was it 17? She became a mother essentially, right? Which is, I mean, about the time that a lot of women would become mothers as well, right? All of a sudden, she went from being Hildegard, the little girl, to Hildegard, the matron figure, right? Yeah. And the next big thing that happens is Yuta passing away. So leading up to it, and man, her brother. Leading up to Yuta dying, her brother sends her a gift of the penitence chains.
Yeah. That I did not know was until I looked up that as well.
Oh, it's I mean, I had read about it when in Sunday school and stuff, but
yeah,
we there was a we talked about historical. It was like one really cool lesson on the historical like self-deprivation type of stuff that people would use, and one of these was a penitence chains, where like if you felt like you were so sinful, you would actually harm yourself with these chains because they had spikes and everything, right? Yeah.
I had heard of the hair shirts. I had heard of that to be uncomfortable and scratching, but I had never heard of the chains.
I thought it was a chain. So like I will totally admit that
they were, some of them were actual chains that are supposed to be heavy, right, to weigh you down, but some of them also have these metal barbs as well to
wrap around yourself.
Yeah. Well, no, but if you remember, Yuta's whip also had 7
That's true. Little spiky things.
Yeah, and that's what Jesuit priests used to do, right? Too much. But so Yuta passes on, and Hildegard takes her very first bold move as like the new magistra, essentially, right? And like does something extremely sacrilegious. They leave like their space fully like in like bride clothing, right? Flowing and beautiful. They sing this beautiful song. It's sacrilegious, and the Archbishop is just like, don't do it again. Right? And then they win their freedom.
Yeah.
For the first time, they get to kind of move around, and that's where Ricardus comes in. So Ricardus comes to see. The Margravine comes with her daughter to go see her nieces, but it just coincided with the time that Yuta passed away.
Yeah.
So she was just like, I'm so sorry, this was not a good timing, but here's my daughter.
Who cannot talk.
Yeah, who's mute, and is the very first lady to say, other than Yuta, right, to say, yes, I want to do this. But she didn't take her vows. She was just a lady who was there until the time was right, and then she wanted to leave. So she was never set against her will. And we find out that this also was the most amount of freedom she's ever had. Right? Instead of like being paraded by her mom for like suitors and stuff, she could now cartwheel, right? Run around the forest, learn how to like draw beautiful illustrations and things, and be able to express herself in a way that she was never allowed to express herself.
Yeah.
Right? So that's kind of where Ricardus comes in. So now there's 4 of them, and we realize that Adelheid really loves reading, so she's always in the scriptorium learning information. Gouda is a very, very good singer. So she's really so she's been doing that, and Hildegard's been writing music, and she gets like a revelation to write Scivias.
Yeah.
And that was like, that's our first really big scandal of the book.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I like to, we didn't touch on it, but so Hildegard does have visions.
Yeah.
And she doesn't really want to say anything, because there's that catch-22 of, if I say I'm having visions, it could so easily be said that the devil is sending these visions.
Yeah.
So it's like,
well, especially like when you're a woman.
Yeah.
And she does have a vision about 3 women figures.
Yeah.
And that she eventually figures out that
Gouda and
Adelheid
and
Ricardus are the 3 that she had a vision about, and I thought that was so cool.
Well, and they all have like very beautiful names, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Caritas is like the like infinite love, right? And it was so beautiful because like I learned all of this in like Bible school, Sunday school. But it was really nice to have it retold to me in a way where it wasn't just like, oh, here's like, here's a term. It was like, oh, this woman embodies this, and through her experience with that person, you're like, yes, this person embodies that character. This person embodies that character, and it was really, really cool. So yeah, I completely forgot to mention about the vision stuff. But yeah, it's so, I mean, misogyny, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was really interesting that her visions were so feminine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She literally envisioned divine love as a woman. She envisioned the church, ecclesia, as a woman.
Yep,
and
the bride. Yep.
Like, it's really cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
I didn't know that part. I knew she was sent visions,
Yeah.
but I didn't know the details.
And she was tried because Kuno and they're like the archbishop is gonna come and read your visions and then determine if they're actually real or
no, not just that. Like the scandal actually went up to Rome.
To be like, is it are you possessed by the devil and seeing these visions? Because how dare you tell me that you have been chosen by God to see these.
Well, and that's the cool thing. So like, I mean, like obviously this is a historical retelling of a lot of like the stuff. But the fact that at the time, not the Pope, but the Pope's like teacher.
Yeah.
Kind of.
I don't want to say archbishop. It's not archbishop. It's something else.
But like I can't remember. So he wasn't the Pope, but he was like the guy that was going to be writing for the Second Crusade. He wasn't the Pope, but he was as powerful as the Pope because the Pope would listen to him.
Yeah, his name was Bernard of Clairvaux.
Yes, Clairvaux. These two, I can't remember who. One of them had the same vision of the celestial wheel.
Oh,
like her.
Okay.
And had she not been honest about her visions, she would not have had that ally.
Yeah.
He also saw the celestial wheel and the feminine figure in the middle. Had the same visions. And because of that, she was given permission to continue to write. Because she was honest and forthcoming, because for the longest time, she was hiding all of this. And finally, she had to just be open about it. And it just so happens that there was a very powerful figure that also had the exact same visions as her.
I think it was Eugenius.
Yeah, genius. Yeah, one of them. But like that's the thing. It's like yes, it's storytelling, but it's also historical. We know that character actually supported Hildegard, right? Like, so cool.
Yeah. I think when I first hated Kuno was like when he basically was just like, why would God give you, of all people, not Yuta, not me, not any of us men,
but you,
why would you get special treatment? Like, you're not special. Mm-hmm. And I was like, but the thing is, like, if he had thought about it, if he thought about some of the saints that they worship,
who are women,
usually they were unassuming people. I mean, think of Jesus, the son of a carpenter, like, unassuming. God loves to take people that aren't necessarily the people that you're going to think is going to be the chosen one. Like,
but it's interesting, like him being an abbot and then seeing throughout the entire time he's there, he's like, wow, your sense of pride as an abbot, as the leader of this monastery, and everything kind of is. And I understand that he was in like between a rock and a hard place in a lot of times, but the idea of like, I am better than you, and like you said, like how dare you have these visions and I don't have these visions. That idea that he is supposed to be better, and that kind of running theme, even though you're running a monastery, and aren't we all supposed to just be not prideful?
Not prideful. There's a little bit of jealousy there too.
Oh, of course. Yeah, there's a lot of jealousy in there.
Definitely.
And I think product of the times too. Like,
I was gonna say that.
As a guy.
I think like for people who are watching this and you may not have a lot of like historical knowledge of Judeo-Christian and stuff, the idea is that like it's supposed to be about humility, right, and submission. And like there is literal scriptures in the Bible that goes like, blessed are the meek, or blessed are like the poor, like they will inherit the kingdom of God, right? Like this idea that like what Karen was saying, like God or Jesus, right, uses these unassuming people to do powerful things because they themselves always find themselves unworthy, right, of many of these gifts and stuff. And it's because of this humility that power is really shown. Whereas a lot of times, and it's not saying that people who are in power don't get these as well. That's just kind of like how historically, like the Christendom has kind of revolved around. Unassuming people who do just almost like just calling out things because they're like, that's wrong. And it just sets something off, right? It's always these small things. It's always small things that happen. And that's why this juxtaposition is so crazy. At the time, Kuno would have been extremely well educated, spoken multiple languages, and he was the head of a monastery, right? A monastery that at that time had 80 men. And as time grew, it kept on shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. So we understand the plight of why he was like this. Like, he was the head of, a monastery, so he was the head honcho, right? That was his form of power. He's also diminishing, right? And there's nothing he can do about it, right? He's not like he's just sitting around doing nothing, right? But there's nothing he can do about it. He's losing like financial support. He's losing moral support. Everything is crumbling around him, and all he can do is just kind of fight. Right? And a lot of times, like what happens is like, you see evil in people because it's a reflection of what you see in yourself. He saw pride because he was proud. He saw arrogance because he was arrogant. And as you like, I mean, I think it's just like, you guys were right. Like the product of the time, right? He probably was told by his supporters and other men that this is not okay. You need to squash it, because like that's when like you can take control again, and you lose the narrative of like worshiping God and loving people, and you only care about power. Which kind of leads into the next portion of this book, right, where Hildegard starts gaining power, right? And it ultimately unravels her life. So she writes Scivias, and it takes her like a decade to write this. And so guys, take 3 months for your author to like write a book. 10 years for this, right? But it took her 10 years because parchment was expensive. They were moving around constantly, and they had to make sure that every word was perfect. The illustrations were perfect, right? But she finishes this book, which was like, she was God's Sibyl. right? She was ordained by God to write this, and she had all the support from all of these higher ups. Kuno was still doing his machinations. And then she goes to go visit the new Pope, I think, right? The new Pope?
Something like that.
Archbishop?
I think it was our,
Archbishop?
I think it was Archbishop.
Yeah,
that was the
Archbishop.
Pernod.
The guy who was like the Pope of the North. Yeah. And he's a young,
Yeah.
handsome man, right? And she audaciously asks for Rupertsburg.
Oh, Archbishop.
Archbishop, yeah, sorry, Archbishop, yeah. Who Rorik is working under.
Yeah.
And while in that feast, she sings with Ricardus. And then like he's like, I could give you anything. She's like, I want that.
I want this piece of land.
Yeah.
That's already in ruin and nobody's taking care of it.
Please, right? Because she finds out that it was built by a woman, Bertha. Saint
Yeah.
Bertha, and to commemorate her son that passed, Rupert. So it's Rupertsburg in Bingen. So he's like, oh, but he goes, okay, here you go. So he gets it, and then all of the drama happens. All of the drama, and this is probably where, when you guys read, this is where you really hate Kuno.
Oh my goodness. That's what I did send a message to you guys. You hadn't even like read that part yet. And I was like, I
was wondering if that was where you got to.
Yeah, where he was basically like, you will never leave this church for the rest of your mortal life.
And I will take all your dowries and they will be for me because I brought, all that stuff.
I was like, oh.
Yeah. And this is where like we always talk about how good this book was written, but this is where you see like the growing confidence and maybe even pride of Hildegard, right?
Yeah.
And because of this pride, she loses sight on her relationships with her daughters, and Gouda is beginning to turn a little bit.
Yeah.
And she's like, I didn't notice this. And it was the first time she didn't notice something in the book. Up until then, she was extremely aware of everything, but then she had a favorite. So she was only aware of, so in the book, right, up until Ricardus coming in and Ricardus becoming very close to her, she would like, the book was very aware of every single character. And then all of a sudden it just focused on Ricardus only.
Yeah. But I think
that's talking about everybody else.
Yeah.
Right? And that coincided with her like being her best friend.
Yeah. But I think that's what really humanizes Hildegard is like, she's not just like this amazing Sibyl with all these visions help everybody. It's like, yeah, she felt guilty to ambition and her own pride and her pure love for Richard. So, and I believe there's a line, she's like, I didn't want to play favorites, but Richard is, or however you pronounce her name. She's like, every time I had a question, that's the person I look to. That's the person I want to be my escort when we go traveling. Like, it kind of gave you that whole like, oh yeah, she again was still just a person who made mistakes and wasn't perfect. And it was kind of neat because it actually made you love her that much more than just as this amazing Sibyl who loved everybody. Which is like, I don't know. There
was one moment in the book at that point. So obviously the machinations end. They leave the monastery towards Rupertsburg. They don't get the dowries. Yeah. And they're bickering because they're like in these like squalid conditions. And Hildegard's like, Fullamar gets called back to the monastery of Disibodenberg. That was a mouthful. I like reading it. I was like, how do you read this? Disibodenberg. And he's like, I gotta go back. And she's like, I'm gonna go with you. And she brings Hiltrude with her instead of Ricardus this time, right? Just because she felt guilty about the playing favoritism. And Ricardus was also sick. So it just so happened that she really couldn't go. So they go and like there was no way. Kuno was not gonna do anything. So she goes and pleads with her brother, who was at that time head of the estate.
Not her younger brother that was in the church, but her older
the other one. Yeah, the
heir.
Hector?
Hector?
I can't remember. But
everywhere.
She like, so he was the head of the household at the time, and he was one of the brothers that she never knew because he went to war. So she never met him, and she pleads him to like give some type of money or support to Rupertsburg. And there was one line he said, it's like the attitude that you have is very ill-fitting for a nun. Yeah. And that was the moment I was like, shit, she just got called out.
Yeah.
Because even he knew, as a like a war, like as someone who has experienced war and all the ugliness, he was just like, this is not good for a nun. You shouldn't be like this. If you were a man, he said, right? Should you have been a man, you would have been a very capable warrior. But this is ill-fitting for a nun. Like your grasp for power, your wanting for power is very ill-fitting for a nun. And that really is where it kind of spirals from there.
Yeah.
Right? Because she's like, but yeah, whatever. That's fine. I win. I got money. I got stuff, right?
Yeah.
It goes back to Rupertsberg, and Gouda has left with 2 of her novices.
Yeah.
Right? Without a goodbye. And she didn't see that coming. And the thing was, had she not been more proud, she would have, hopefully. It's like she looks back, she's like, oh, I would have seen these things coming had I just not been so blinded by my pursuits. And then Adelheid leaves because she becomes an abbess.
Yeah. And then
her 3, her Holy Trinity, leaves her.
Yeah.
And she's left with her, well, she's left with her prize, right? Rupert.
Yeah, and it's tragic.
Heartbreaking.
It was.
Yeah.
And then there was one point near the end where she was talking to, after she had she wrote her morality musical.
Yeah.
And she's handing out parts, and the sisters are like kind of wary, and she's like, is this what I have become? Have I been like so angry that all my girls now are scared of me, and like they're wary of me talking to them? And I'm like, oh, self-revelation, that's cool, I like that. And then she fell sick, and she's like, my love, my Ricardus, she's gone. Like, what do I have left? I was like, all right, cool, I've got all this money, but my closest sisters are all gone. So-and-so despises me. And then that whole, the biggest folly, writing her angry letters to Ricardus's mom, writing it to all of her patrons, and like, how dare you? Yeah, how dare you bring her back, force her back to me. And it was kind of interesting. And then just seeing how quickly everything kind of unraveled, because it was within like 5-ish, like 3 to 5 years, where she was at the height of her ambition, and all of a sudden it all comes crumbling down. She's lost the people closest to her. She's angry. And it's kind of like the only point in the entire book where she has such strong negative feelings about people.
Well, and
right?
That's why, like I said, I could humanize Kuno, because she just became Kuno at that point.
Yeah.
She was Kuno, right? And she was trying to use her power and her machinations and everything. And I think what's beautiful about the book is that there is like there's a self-centeredness that she realized, okay, this is not good. And then there's salvation from it, right? There's a hope after it, because she had started the Ordo Virtutum, which is the play of the virtues, the morality plays. And then she had stopped because Rupertsberg was really important. And then she was just like, and then she started having revelations again, right? And then she finished writing it. And then that, because of her newfound humility, she was able to give the parts to the right people based off of who they embodied rather than who she liked.
Yeah.
And
she was able to see more clearly once she herself recognized in her own self.
Yeah. And and throughout that entire time, unfortunately, Ricardus passes away. And like her brother does say, or not brother, who said? Margravine. The Margravine does say. She did want to be by your side. She did want to come back, right? And it's almost kind of hits even harder that Hildegard realizes it was her pride that pushed her away. Right? Because
she did come back
in her dream.
And
that was that. And that was that, like that kind of supernatural. She came back, and then the next day she realized she passed away.
Right? I thought she actually did come back, and I'm like, oh yay, they're gonna be happy. Oh, she dreamed it. No. And then you read the next line, you're like, and she died. And you're like, what?
She came through the door where
There's so much symbolism.
So much symbolism.
Because like they were saying, like she was there, and then someone walks through the door where they usually bring through the funeral. And she was like shaking because she was like, oh, it's a ghost or something like that, right? So I was like, at that point, that was like Ricardus' spirit coming back, right? Wanting to be back. And then that was like her final farewell. I was like, oh.
There's so much like tragedy, but also so much good in this book. And it was kind of like parts of it I almost felt like I had to put down because like my heart can't take this. It can't take the emotions that I am feeling for all the things that are happening right now. And I need to like just stop, but I cannot stop. I need to know what happens next. Yeah, like there are parts where I'm like, my chest is like actually aching for these people and the stuff that they're going through. Like, as much as Utah was kind of like a little crazy, um, to understand that kind of passion, like is hard because I don't know many people that have that deep of a love for something that you literally give up everything for. Because she literally gave up everything, like pretty much her entire life. Gave up food, gave up any form of vanity, gave up just absolute everything. And that in a very true sense, like the absolute purest love was her devotion in it.
Mhm.
Even if there was jealousy in there with the whole Hildegard seeing visions thing.
Yeah. But I think that's the thing. It's like because every single character was humanized.
Yeah.
You can still appreciate their longing for something.
Mhm.
Right? They wanted something, and yes, they had stumbling blocks, but you can still appreciate they tried their hardest. Even if some tried in vain, they tried their hardest towards something because they truly believe that thing, right? And I mean, I know this is a music book club. One thing I do want to say, the one thing I found really interesting was that when the book, during the book, when it was the most loving and the most spiritual, it was the most musical.
Yeah.
And whenever it wasn't, there was no music. So there was at one point where Kuno did not allow them because they didn't have an abbot or a priest, no music. And then when she was in the height of her power, no music. There was no talk. It's like she stopped writing her music and whatever. There was no music, right? And even though they were singing, and even though she was like, "Oh, I'm really into this," it didn't talk about the passion and then the revelry that she used to have, right? Yeah. So throughout this entire book, music was like the defining feature of love. When there was the most amount of love, music was at the center of it. At the very end, the morality play was the center of it, right? During that time where at the end of the book where like they were not allowed to do anything because they hid the body of like a monk, right? And one of their sisters was dying in the medical room or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
The sanatorium. They sung. Right? Because they're like, well, we can't sing there, but we can sing here. Yeah. And that showed their love for her.
Yeah.
And then they saw the cross.
Yeah. And those are the points in the book where you actually have lyrics as well.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like music is so central to her vision of what pure love is.
Yeah.
And every moment in this book, every single time there's a moment of pure love in music was very powerful. The height of love, right?
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool.
And you could almost say God is love. So basically whenever she felt the closest to divinity was when music was the most powerful. Like I think there was one of the quotes in there that I flagged because I was like, this is amazing. And I'm gonna see if I can find it. Music was cosmic, for it embraced the universe, reaching from earth to highest heaven in a pillar of praise. And so it's that connection. It's literally as soon as you're making music, you have that connection. And I totally agree with you, Matt. Like that was something I didn't actually realize was when she was the most connected spiritually, that was when there was the most music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I think like personally for myself, like I know we seek out books that have music as a theme. And this one is definitely one of the ones where I was like, it weaves its way through. And it's very crafted in when music is not there. It's absent because of where her life journey is, rather than it's absent because there was like something else that was a little bit more important, like this machination or this drama, right? Mm-hmm. There was drama, but it made sense. It ebbed and flowed like her life, right? And it was really interesting that it kind of juxtaposed her, like when she was most proud, music was here. And then when she was the most humble, music was up here, and just kept going back and forth. And it really adds like that to that humanity, right?
Yeah.
Just a human being trying to be like the best that she can. And she also lived to a very old age.
For that time, oh yeah.
Like into her like late 70s.
Yeah.
Right?
I
Like
think then most people die in like 50s or something like that.
40s.
Or in the middle ages, 50s, 40s, yeah.
Yeah, like her mom was an old lady when she was sent to
She was like 35 because she had like 10 kids.
Mentioned too, like as soon as women start having babies, that basically eats away at your life. And having just had a baby, I totally can see that because when you're pregnant, the kid is like taking everything from you.
Yeah.
They're taking like the calcium. That's why her mother's teeth fell out.
Because she's like at 35, my mom was already like a broken woman kind of physically because she's had so many kids. She had no teeth. Yeah, like she had no teeth left and her back was stooped and
so it's like I was like, oh my God, I can relate. Like if you had like 10 of them, like that makes she had like 11 or 12.
She had 12, two miscarriages.
She had 12 and she had 2 more,
Like, you were an ancient person at 35 because you were so worn down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think Hildegard even mentioned the fact that she kind of not escaped that life, but she lived longer because she retained her body strength.
Yeah. Well, that's and that's the thing. Like during this time, either you were a woman that popped out babies, or you could be a nun. And it's not as sexy now because guess what? We're working towards equity and equality, right?
Yeah.
But at that time, if you were someone who just didn't want that life of just being married off, you would become a nun because that was the only safe haven you had.
Yeah. You could make that choice.
Yeah.
If you could make that choice,
Because
you could, but like I can imagine many of the higher ladies because even Utah, mom's like, I just want to marry her off to somebody rich and have some kids and maintain all this, and you're just like no, I need to go to the church, I need to be
and Utah's a really interesting character because we're led to believe that she actually like we're led to believe that there are different facets to her mind, but I think she also knew that because of her experience with her brother raped her. She knew in her mind that she needed to act in a way that could get her into the church because she did not want to do anything with men anymore. Yeah. She was scared of that, right? So it made sense for her to be in that position, right? And then other characters like Adelheid and Gouda, they didn't have a choice, but it was a motherly figure, an aunt, protecting them from men, and Ricard is choosing, right? So it was kind of like almost like a gradual change in the way that these characters get kind of instated in the nunnery, right? Is that the first person, she's doing it because she needs to protect herself. The second one is they're being put here because they're being protected. And the third one chooses of her own free will. Yeah. Kind of the 3 different facets, right? But at the time it's like, well, guess what? Like most children didn't live past 5. So you had to have a lot because a lot of these families needed extra hands to work in the field and do work around the house. And it was just a product of the time. So like reading it, like what Amanda said, like you have to be mindful we are reading from a 21st century point of view. And during that time, that was what it was, right? Like her mom didn't know how to read or write her own name. Yeah. Right. And like, of course, like her mom would favor certain daughters and sons over others because that was how a family rose up in stature, right? And she was always awkward, right? And that's why she was always kind of like, she was the youngest child, so like at that time, so like that's why she was always being handed off to like I can't remember her
Walden or something.
Yeah, Walburga. Yeah, right, because her mom needed help, right? So it's like that's why I didn't like really blame the mom for being the way that she was. It was just she was a product of the time, and she wanted to climb the ladder too. She wanted her family and her daughters and sons to marry well so they can have a better life. Yeah. And in turn, hopefully she would have a better life too, right? Yeah. That was just how it was, right?
And as hard as it as like again as a 21st century person looking at it, is like when you read the surface of like, I'm gonna give my youngest child away because she is the 10th and she's a tithe. So that's one thing. But the idea of like, if you go with her, and you don't have a choice, by the way, you go with Utah, but the Baroness is going to pay the dowries of your two most beautiful sisters so that they can have a better marriage. And on the surface, you're like, man, that's horrible.
Mhm.
But like you said, the best that she could do is to look out. You unfortunately have to play the favorites, because it is often at that time, if you were a beautiful woman, you fetch a higher price and you would marry better, and that brings her station up. So like, yeah, her looking out for her family, unfortunately at that time, it's like, yeah, that probably is the best choice you could really make. Unfortunately, to secure the future, which also unfortunately you realize later that they had really crappy marriages despite the dowry and having marrying somebody more well off.
Mhm.
But you know, like you said, it's the best that she could do at the time to support her family.
Mhm.
Because like the guys, what can you do really as a guy in a farm family? Like, you don't have that title, you don't have the money to kind of back it up. But at least with women, if you're pretty, you can go up in class, you can go up in stature.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So,
and that's how, like, it's like it was a product of the time, right?
yeah.
And it's interesting because, like, I mean, like now, like kind of thinking about the book itself, they didn't spend a lot of time talking about like the actual like construction of garments and stuff, so I had to look it up. Um, and
Oh, goat hair or something.
well, no, just like the, like, for example, the habits and like all the type of like
Yeah.
dresses and stuff. Like, so I had to kind of look because I really wanted to kind of envision these dresses of the like 1100s and stuff. So I had to look back and stuff, and I was like, oh, okay, like this was like the type of dress, like, because I was really confused because I know at the tail end of the book, like Barbarossa, right? Future
Yeah.
Barbarossa is there, and I was like, I know you, but I don't remember exactly which time period you're from, so I had to like do a deep dive. It's like, you know how like when you read about like composers and you're like, you lived through the French Revolution.
Yeah. Recognize your
I
name.
just like compartmentalized you here, and I didn't realize that like you know the world actually kept it going. Like Debussy died at the end of World War I, right? That's why he didn't get much of a funeral, right?
Yeah, put them in context of history, not just
Yeah.
one little
Well,
book.
which is why like a lot of the books that we've been reading have been very fun.
Mhm.
Like, you know, like Ecstasy, even the Mozart book that we the
Or even
Constant.
The Conductor.
Yep, The Conductor. We need to talk about that book again too, right? But it's been nice to be able to talk about these books in context of what was happening around them, and because of that, understand why they made the choices they made, and were forced to make some of the choices they made because of the time that they were in. Like, well, Do Not Say We Have Nothing. That's another one, right? Nocturnes, right? All of these books gives you historical context to why these musicians or composers had to do the things they had to do, right?
Yeah.
And in this case here, it was, I mean, 5 out of 5 stars, right?
Oh,
I appreciated Hildegard before this book. I now at least know a little bit more about her, and I've researched and listened to Ordo Virtue 2 multiple times, but now I have such a bigger appreciation of the amount of love and care she put into staging that first performance.
Yeah.
Right? Really embodying her love for her daughters and her family, and being able to kind of show that to the world, right?
Yeah.
So powerful. And like, what Karen said, like in a way where we've like, because, you know, Christianity, but all religions is very dominated by men. We always see male figureheads, and this idea of God being female, right? And her celebrating God as female, and all of these characters that we were always associated with masculine traits as feminine but powerful, feminine and loving, right? And her visions being accepted, right? It's
And
really
promoted.
cool to, like, well, it's just really cool to like challenge the way that we think about all of these things moving forward. It's like feminine is not weak, masculine is not strong. God is not like, really, God shouldn't be either or. God is just God. God is just love, really, when it comes down to it, right? And through this book, that's kind of like what I got as the message.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We didn't really touch on it, but how about the last like 5 pages or whatever where she makes the complete scathing speech
Oh,
to
Yeah.
yes.
the like the higher ups, and
I was like, yes.
Yeah. So
as they're burning heretic.
yeah, on the
Yeah.
other side of the church.
Yeah.
Love that. And I'm like,
Well,
you do you, Hildegard.
No.
You do you.
No, seriously, like I was just like, yes, queen, yes. Queen.
Love it.
So, I mean, the contrast that was created there, right?
Yeah.
Not only was she preaching to save the people that were burning behind her,
Yeah.
right? She was like, you're the reason why they're there.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're the reason why you failed those people, these people, all these people are around you. You who only want all these things. This was like a sermon on the mount kind of situation.
Oh, it was
right?
like
It was like electrifying because it was the only time in the book where it was righteous anger and righteous pride.
Yes.
yes.
All the other times it was just her own pride, but this was God telling her, you need to tell these people everything they're doing is wrong and you need to condemn them, right? And she was just like, I'm a woman. A woman has never preached.
Yeah.
Whatever. I'm old. I don't care anymore, right? And she just laid it, and I was like, yes.
Yeah.
And
well,
you know
and
what? Selfishly,
sorry.
Selfishly, I love that she's like, when I was done, I was exhausted, and who was there? Fulmar was there to catch me because he's like my bro, and he is there supporting me, and I'm like, oh, my heart, I can't even. Yeah. And the best line is like, what are they gonna do? I'm just a little old nun.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are they gonna do to me? And I'm like, yes, I love you so much.
Yeah. And it is interesting whenever she makes these powerful speeches, there is thrown in that I, a humble, small woman.
Yeah.
You know, it's like thrown in there, but this is God's anger.
Yeah, but it's like that little slap in the face. It's like you look down on me because I'm a nun, but even I can be a vessel for God's message. Even I can say things, and it's almost like it tells you just how
on that double-edged sword.
Well, she's extremely intelligent. She knows her audience. She knows what she can get away with. And this, like, and I know people like sometimes they're just like, well, like, if you're kind of like thinking about all these things, it's not genuine. It is genuine, right? Yeah. You can understand who you are, what you can and cannot do, and still do something completely genuinely out of your heart. Knowing your place, knowing what your power is, knowing what you can do for people. That's okay, right? And she knew what she could do. She knew that at that moment in time, she was so popular with Hector Barbarossa because she prophesied his victory, that he would never do anything to her, that's why she could do it.
Yeah.
And then we know that after that, she diminishes because everyone sets their eyes against her, right? Yeah. But at that time, at that moment in time, she had a place, and she knew what it was, and she knew what she could do, and she did it.
Yeah.
Right? Just the way that she did all of those other things in her life. But this was kind of like the pinnacle, right? Like the coming out of I really need to remember what that little like walled off area was called. Coming out of there in her bridegroom, like with like Adelheid and Gouda and Yuta's like funeral, that was all her.
Yeah.
She wanted her freedom. Right? Yeah. Getting Rupertsburg, that was her. She wanted to be an abbess. This was God.
Yeah.
Right? This was God being like, finally, you understand what it means to serve me, right? I will make you one of the most powerful people, but in a way that that is not fathomable, right? It's not something that you can calculate with money. You're going to change the minds of people. You're going to change the hearts of people. You will put these people, you will condemn them and put them in their place in a way that a woman at that time could have never done, right? You're going to, seriously, like, you're going to pave the way for future women to do greater things because you were able to like find that love and that humility, right? It's so cool because so many people like look back, like, you know, they always go like, oh, Beethoven was my like inspiration, right? Hildegard is a lot of people's inspiration when it comes to composers. She's like, quote unquote, the bitch, you know what I mean? Like, she was the big one. She inspired so many people, right? To become, because like if she could do it against all odds, right?
Yeah. But as we've all said, like, I don't think anybody really knows about this. Even people who study music, like, because we all did all the same history classes, we all did the, you know, all that stuff. And I'm like, other than that one little paragraph, like I don't think any of us knew how powerful she was or the impact she had in these people's lives, other than, okay, she was, you know, the first major female composer. Cool. Awesome. Yeah. That's a big one. But all the other stuff that she did, who knows that other than people who actually research her?
Well,
So
and you know what really is funny now is like, it would be amazing to be able to talk to Dr. Hammond, right? Because her specialty is medieval music.
we should send her one of these books.
I bet you she's already
Give her
read
a copy.
it. I bet she's already read it. It would be so interesting to now be able to talk to someone who is a scholar in this world of music and be able to have a meaningful conversation about what else she now knows, Dr. Hammond, right?
Yeah.
There was no way we would have even scratched the surface in music history because medieval music was 3 months.
Yeah.
Was it
And
even?
it was literally like, if you
Oh
think
yeah.
about the textbook that we had, it was like, oh, here's like this composer, and then you listen to this sample, and then here's this composer, and you listen to it, and this is why they're important, and this is like polyphony, and this is when you have one voice, and this is for women, and like you just kind of go, okay, like it's so surface.
Mhm.
I remember the one thing I think the only thing I remember about those classes was like remembering looking at the music and be like, there's no bar lines. What a crap.
Yeah.
Why
That
do
was
you
the
know
one
it's
thing was
square?
looking at, I'm like,
These are all
where do
squares.
they even pick things up? There's no bar lines, everything's squares. Like, how do they even know that's a whole note? Like, that was my issue.
Wild West of music notation at the time. But no, you're right. It's like honestly, think about it. If let's say we came up with a course where it was just women in music, right? And we just centered around, let's say, 5 books of women in music, and we studied those books, we read the books, and we listened to their music in a profound new way now that we know their story a little bit more. And we didn't rush it. We would and then we would talk about their connections with these pieces, and we would study other pieces. Like I said, like we could read about Constance Weber and her sisters and now have an appreciation for the Queen of the Night aria, because it was specifically written for this one character, this one person who is real, who existed, who was popular and famous in her own right during that time. And it gives us a better appreciation for why Mozart wrote this, right? Why Mahler did this, right? Like it just gives that understanding. Like now, like I said, like now, hopefully, like if you guys get a chance to listen to the morality plays, listen to it, right? Because now now when you hear the devil, you're like, oh, that was Fullemar.
Yeah.
Right? He was playing that, right? And yeah, the devil does not sing.
Oh yeah, he just
because he's evil. Right? He's supposed to be love and God. So all the virtues, right? Like that context is what I missed in history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was a lot more focus on, here's this piece, listen to it, this is why it's important, but it basically the humanity was taken out of it.
Oh yeah.
These books, like even if they're just fiction, right? They add that personhood back to the music and gives us a feeling of, oh no, these were real people. Yeah. This is why it's important. Because to me, I'm like, I don't really care that,
Well, history was just a practice of memorization, right? Like, remember this fact, remember this date, remember why this. And I think that's why history was I will say in present tense, is so dry for many people, because it's just like, here's this is why it's important, here's this, like, but you put like you said, a humanity spin on it, all of a sudden, if I can relate to it, I'm definitely going to remember it more, and it would probably affect me way more than being like, okay, Beethoven was born here, he did this.
When I teach the composers, I have to get better at this, but when I teach the composers to give them a story, the kids are way more interested.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And just like to have that conversation, right? You need the story. You can't just say, well, Beethoven was born in and he was like deaf. And it's like, well, okay, you're not really getting the person. You're just getting the Cliff's Notes of a person.
Yeah. And to be able to humanize something, it makes things that are a little bit more dry, easy, more palatable. So like, for example, we read this book and then we talk about how the church works. the hierarchy and stuff. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, so Hildegard was here, Kuno was here, Rorik was here. Because we have names to those titles,
Yeah.
drier, more uninteresting thing becomes more interesting.
Yeah.
Right? Because we have characters like in like for Alma and Gustav, we now have more like, oh, this is where they summered.
Yeah.
But like here in this area, this is here. We can now dive in pictures and you can be like, oh, they would have been walking in these forests. That personifies and makes these even the maps more interesting. Because it's like, oh, like Beethoven was born in Germany. Don't know much about Bonn, right? But if you understand that, like he grew up in a household, his father was a drunk and they were unreliable, and then really he had to rise up and become the father figure, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he had to do all these things and stuff. He struggled, and you hear that, and people rally behind characters that.
It is the context. Like I like right now in my class, our term 2 just finished, but term 2 was all about great persons in music that you may not know. So we went back and looked at, like the beginnings of hip hop. We looked at Black composers that you probably don't know the names of, and every one of my classes has a bit of biography to it. And pulling out these facts where I'm like, you must remember this was in the 50s when there was a lot of racial segregation and there was all this kind of stuff, blah, blah, blah. And the question some of the kids ask is surprisingly deep when they're like, well, how did she do this? And I'm like, well, she was kind of lucky, to be honest. And all this kind of stuff. So like very true about the story, because if you just threw like memorize this, they're not going to do it.
Yeah. Well, and that's why like I've always been like, I think as I'm getting older and older and teaching more and more, I'm not a very vocal opponent. I just don't see music as something that really should be a college level degree anymore. It should be something that should be back in the studio and you learn because you want to do it, not because you want to mark, right? I just think 4 years, it's not enough to just scratch the surface on one era, let alone 8 or 9 or 10, right? Like this idea of like, you have to have this many lessons, this many courses, this many things to justify that you as a musician. Like I can safely say that some of my piano players probably know more because I love these certain topics, not everything, but certain topics. They know more about Baroque harmony than probably some of the first or second years because they grew to love it, right? And that wasn't something that they learned in college. And the problem with putting an start and end date on something is that people often think, oh, I'm done that. Like we did a course on it, we're good. But no, it's a forever learning thing. So I've always been like, maybe it's time to rethink education, at least for music anyways, as something more like back into the salon, right? Like a small group like us chatting about, like think of all of the stuff that we've learned in this book club just by reading and chatting about it.
Yep.
Right?
And not
Way
even
more than the 4 years I did in music.
Right? And not even just about the music, but like the politics and world views and like all these like the idea that composers knew each other as opposed to like I have this chunk for Beethoven, this chunk for and this and this and this. Oh, but Shostakovich actually talked to this because we're alive at the same time in the same area.
It always blows my mind because I forget that they all lived at the same time and they were contemporaries.
Right? And I'm like, okay, but in your mind, you're kind of like taught like this is this, this is this, this is this. And then when you read these books and to be reminded over and oh, that's right. They lived in the same country, therefore, and they were pretty big at the same time. Therefore, they actually saw and met and competed. And you're like, oh my God, how have I not realized this before?
Well, and then to put that in context with our book, like at that time, people didn't travel, right?
Yeah,
because they didn't travel, they didn't like people didn't know who Bach was.
Yeah.
If they didn't travel to listen to Bach, they wouldn't know who Bach was, and that's why like up until a certain time, Bach's music became obscure. No one knew about it until like Mendelssohn's big reproduction of one of the Passions, and then people's like, oh, old music is cool. But like Hildegard, she probably didn't get a chance to meet any of her contemporaries because she was stuck in that little area, and people probably didn't listen to her. Like people in Rome probably didn't listen to her music until she was dead because she was in the Germanic lands. That wasn't Rome. right? Rome would have had their own composers, right?
And her music too, it's very different because it's not performative. It's I'm singing for God. It's just for this space. It's not meant to be distributed and then everybody puts it in their program and their sermon. And you know, like it's not quite the same.
Yeah, it's not meant as a traveling act or to impress like the kings and queens. It is that personal relationship, which makes it all the more better.
Yeah.
But like
it's music for the sake of music rather than music for other people.
Or money.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of it was like, hey, I'm a dying patron. Please give me money if I write you a mass.
I almost want to feel like we need to do like a whole series where we just like delve into music and history and why it needs to change and like
We should. I mean, I'd be up for it.
I think we should petition RCM to have like an alternative like class and just do books like this.
I honestly think we should just do it ourselves.
Yeah.
Between the three of us, I think we can come up with a pretty good, some type of curriculum of some sort. I'm sure we could.
I think we could.
We don't need RCM. We can do it ourselves.
Yeah, we can do it ourselves. Like, I mean, IMSLP, it's all free. All the music is free, and it's just like it would just be off of books that we would read or like, you know, documents that we love and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And just like, and it's like, it's not like disclaimer, we're not experts, but we really love this. Yeah. We really love talking about this.
We're not experts, but we're all educators.
Yeah.
We all want other people to learn because we get excited about learning, and we recognize that there are faults in current systems, and it doesn't have to be a music major who's interested in this. You know, like I want to be able to share Hildegard and be like, look, she was super cool.
We could teach a course like what's his name did.
Achilles?
Yes. Oh God, I loved his classes. I loved his classes.
Went on Beyonce or something.
No, I did the history of rock and roll, and my God, that was the funnest class because he was just so like into it.
Yeah.
And he would sit there and he's like, look at his purple velour suit, guys. Look how amazing he looks in purple. He's got a cigarette in one hand, and he's got the microphone in his, and he's sweat. Like, it was just the most amazing class because it was fun. And because it wasn't just like dates and whatever. And he's like, this guy was a big reason because of all this stuff. However, he also did all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But like, yeah, that'd be amazing. It'd be so much fun.
Yeah, I find at UVic, at least, the summer courses tend to be a little more
palatable.
Niche.
Yeah, there's like a Beyonce 101 and history of the Beatles.
I took a history course that was like all about saints.
Oh, cool.
In medieval literature. And I was like, this is super niche, but I want to dig it. Like,
that sounds like a lot of fun, actually.
That's actually really neat. Yeah.
But like, no, you're right. It's like the times I've come across people who know way more than I do, and simply because they just fell in love with like that one piece of music they heard, and they just deep dove. And I was like, why did you deep dive? They're like, oh, I just felt like it. And they're an engineer, right? Yeah. Like this love, like who would have thought at 34 I would be talking about Hildegard von Bingen in a way where I didn't just like saw her as a footnote.
Yeah.
In a way where I'm just like, I finally get a little glimpse of this character, even if it's from a fictional book. I now have a connection with her music that I didn't think I would ever have. I thought I was a romantic 20th century person, right? But now I have so much more appreciation for these characters. Who would have thought?
Yeah. It's cool. Yeah, and now I know that I can say a little bit more about Hildegard rather than like she was a nun. Because, you know, and nuns learned how to write, and she also was a botanist, you know, like, and that's kind of
like the max of what we learned when we were at school,
you know, and like, and the botanist thing, I didn't even know until I looked it up myself, and I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, kids want to know that they're not just a composer. They're like a composer, but she's also into plants, but that was literally all I knew.
Yeah.
I feel kind of bad that I was teaching and I didn't know the extent of her
Yeah.
career or
Yeah.
her life.
But even all these other people, like as I was reading, like I looked up Utah, I looked up Homor, I looked up like all these other characters, and I'm like, okay, so this is what was happening. Who actually is this guy, for like more context? So it kind of like opens that that doorway to not just the people but the time of this of all of this happening. And I will totally be honest, when I read Barbosa for the first time, I literally thought of that squid creature from Parts of the Caribbean, because like that is immediately where my brain went. I'm like, no, wrong Barbosa.
Right.
Probably look up who the actual Barbosa
Yeah.
is.
So I mentioned that to John, and John was like, Operation Barbarossa? Wasn't that something from like World War II or World War
Yes.
Yeah. So I was going to say, I meant
Barbarossa's actually a person.
yeah.
Right, actually.
No, so Barbosa is the Pirates of the Caribbean character. It's Hector Barbarossa.
Yeah.
Barbarossa, and I'm not.
Bar.
Don't quote me on this. I believe that the name Barbarossa is where we get the word barbaric from.
That makes sense. Okay, yeah.
Because he was a barbaric. He just slaughtered people. Just killed people all the time. But
I like you. I want to put you in a position of power because you're loyal to me.
yeah, but I mean, makes sense, right? You know,
yeah, makes sense for that.
Totally makes sense. So like, and it was like kind of like a oh yeah, this is happening, but we now have context as to the tumultuous world that she was living in at the time.
Yeah.
Right. You get to learn a little bit of music and history, and you care about it because it affects it's affecting a character that you love.
Yeah. I will definitely commend Mary Sharratt for the stuff that she writes, because her, like I said in the very beginning, like her style of writing is so approachable. And the three of us have history with church and religion. So certain things in here, you're like, yeah, I'm not surprised. I knew that from Sunday school and stuff like that. But it's written in a way that if you weren't a person that went to church with with your family or whoever, or you weren't religious, it's still like you don't have to look up stuff. It made sense without the back knowledge. So it's, and we said that about Ecstasy too, where like even if you weren't an expert in music and you weren't an expert in Klimt or any of the visual arts and stuff like that, it's still an approachable book. You would still enjoy it, and you would still probably love it because of the way that she has written. So I'm actually really stoked to read her next one coming up. But like, good for her, because these are not the people that she chooses to write about are not major characters.
Yeah.
Like this one is, I've never even heard of this woman at all, and she's supposed to be a writer with Shakespeare.
Who's the woman?
The woman is Amelia Bassano-Lanier, and she ends up leaving with Shakespeare to write with him at a time where women are not supposed to be writers, especially literature and plays and stuff like that. Like, I don't know these women. Yeah. But I guess this is Mary Sharratt's kind of niche, is to write about these women that are actually major characters that unfortunately get lost in history, which is really cool.
Really cool.
It is really cool. All right, well, I mean, another 5 out of 5 for everyone.
Oh my god, 5 out of 5.
I totally would give this 5. Yes, loved this. Like, we'll probably read this again.
I love The Conductor, but like this one, every time I would put it down, I would look at John and I would go, I love this book. My favorite book, and I can't stop thinking about it.
So good. It was so good. Yes.
Yeah. It's one of the ones, but I will say, I think in a couple of years, I would love to reread it again.
Yes,
like,
I would
kind of like get more out of it again. Like when I'm a little bit older, and I was like, oh look, and like now I'm her age at that point.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
It's a powerful book in a lot of ways, though. Yeah. Like, it's not just light. It's light, but it's not. Like, there's so much that you could unpack in this. But
the name of the book is very fitting as well.
Yeah, very much.
Right?
So.
Because it's like illuminations. Like, it's not even like shining a light on something, but it's also like shining on a path, right? And it's like, yeah, like, I mean, oh.
Yeah. So Matt, you've got a tough act to follow, because
I'm not following. I'm not following.
And then this ended up being amazing. So like,
It's okay. You know what? One of us needs to take the fall, and one of us needs to
Because you
find the
might pick
book
a
that's gonna
5-star.
So I was looking through a couple of options. I was like, oh, maybe we should do. I was really I was like, maybe we should do the one on Mineral Mozart, but I decided not to. I was like, okay, you know what? We've been doing a lot of these same books where it's like centered around a female character, right? And we want like, and we've been doing a lot of those. I was like, this is great. We will do the Mineral music. One of you guys can pick it too if you want, but I want to do something completely different. So the book that I've chosen is called A Song for a New Day by Sarah Pinsker.
mhm.
And I will read the synopsis. In this captivating science fiction novel from an award-winning author, public gatherings are illegal, making concerts impossible, except for those willing to break the law for the love of music and for one chance at human connection. In the before, when the government didn't prohibit large public gatherings, Luce Cannon was on top of the world. One of her songs had just taken off, and she was on her way to becoming a star. Now, in the after, terror attacks and deadly viruses have led the government to ban concerts, and Luce's connection to the world, her music, and her purpose is closed off forever. She does what she has to do. She performs in illegal concerts to a small, passionate community, always evading the law. Rosemary Laws barely remembers the before times. She spends her days in hood space, helping customers order all of their goods online for drone deliveries, no physical contact with humans needed. By a lucky chance, she finds a new job and a new calling. Discover amazing musicians and bring their concerts to everyone via virtual reality. The only catch is that she'll have to do something she's never done before and go out in public. Find the illegal concerts and bring musicians into the limelight they deserve. But when she sees how the world could actually be, that won't be enough. So the reason why I chose this, A, because we haven't really done something science fiction-y. Also, a lot of the kind of like settings is very pertinent to the times right now.
Yeah,
Right?
the
We
whole
have plagues.
not allowed
As
concerts.
soon as you were like, can't have large gatherings, I was like, oh, that sounds really familiar.
Yeah, can't have concerts. Sounds about right.
Yeah.
So I think this book, obviously, it'll be more character and story based kind of driven book, less so about the music. I think the music will probably be more of the context, but you never know. You never know, right? But that's kind of like why I chose it ultimately, because I was like, we're literally living in parts of this right now.
Yeah.
And it would be really interesting to kind of see how this author, like upon writing this book, would react to it now.
Mhm.
That because like when was it written? Oh well, it was written September 2019, right before COVID, right? Interesting. So it would be very interesting kind of see how this author wrote in her way how a pandemic and everything would affect it.
Yeah.
And this idea of everyone staying at home doing virtual reality, no contact, and like delivering everything, it's happening. It's happening in and around the world right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I picked it, because I thought it was kind of pertinent to our time. And it might not be as deep, but I felt like it would be a nice break because we haven't done any sci-fi, and sci-fi is something that I really love.
You haven't done
really love
sci-fi in like,
I don't think we've had a real sci-fi book unless you counted soul music.
No, soul music is fantasy.
the
Okay.
Chimes that it was like the second book that we read.
Yeah, I think that was the only one.
Ugh.
And I don't know, and here's the thing, I think the Chimes would have been fantastical as well, right? Because music was magic, right? Music was used as magic, right?
Mhm.
So I think this may be our first sci-fi, but like I said, I don't know, like just reading the synopsis and the summary here, I don't know if music is going to be a central theme, but it's going to be like it's used as the backdrop to the two characters doing what they're doing. So it's it says here that it's about like sub 400 pages. So hopefully it's not like terribly long.
I'll look it up
384.
on what's it called? Give me one sec. A Song for a New Day.
Song for a New Day. Yeah. By Sarah Pinsker, Pinsker. And
So I just looked it up on Goodreads, and apparently I had already put it on my want to read pile.
there you go.
Okay.
I love the artwork in the front. It's very like punk
Oh,
rock.
it's pretty.
It's
Kindle edition. Let's take a look at the paperback edition. Paperback, 372 pages apparently.
Yeah. So hopefully it's not like, I mean, we'll see. I did pick soul music and that was a drag.
It wasn't awful. There were parts of soul music I really liked. And then there were parts that I didn't.
It just, unfortunately, it was something where I thought the book could have been a standalone, but it wasn't really a standalone. There was a lot of background information you really did need about the world before you really understood what was going on. So this book here is not part of a series. So hopefully it will be more of a standalone. Fingers crossed. But like I said, I'm willing to take the fall this time because I was like, you know what? Let's read something a little bit more fun, you know? This is obviously going to be about rock music and virtual reality. You know, it's not going to be classical. Well, I mean,
So when are we going to be talking about it?
I guess you know what? It'll be up to you two.
April, May.
Or I guess Amanda's, because
I would
Amanda,
say
you're the one that has an actual real job.
No, I would say feeding a baby is a real job.
Mhm.
yeah.
I'm
say-
barely reading right now.
I'd say May or end of. I'd avoid the last half of June because that is my report card time and wrapping up the year.
We can just kind of like aim for May, June, that time.
We could say like beginning of June. That gives us like 2 months and 2.5 months, I think. March, April, May.
Yeah.
2.5 beginning of June.
Yeah, and then we can always chime in it around like the end of April. Be like, hey, how's everybody doing?
Yeah,
Hey,
and
you haven't bought your book yet? Neither have I.
push this one too because
Yeah.
we basically read The Conductor for January, and then someone was basically like, all right, in February.
Yeah. And this was like such a quick read. Like, it was just so good. I was like, damn you, Utah, stop hurting yourself. People love you. Stop it.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, we were pretty good with every 2 months, but I think at this point right now, let's just be flexible.
Yeah.
Let's be
I
flexible.
mean, having a new baby isn't exactly easy either. So
Uh-huh.
Love her. She's so super cute, but like the waking up every 3 hours is something else.
is it just feeding? That's up to every 3 hours?
Well, I mean, just feeding. Like
Well, you know what I mean.
you wake up and change her and then feed her, and that'll take like half hour to 45 minutes sometimes. And like so because she's a preemie, she was born 5 weeks early.
Yeah.
We hadn't quite developed her sucking.
Oh, yeah.
So I am pumping and I'm feeding her breast milk, but by a bottle. So it's like I'm feeding her bottle and then I'm pumping, and that takes like 15 minutes. And it's just like, it just adds.
Yeah.
By the time the 3 hours is like, I've used up an hour, and then I get maybe an hour and a half of sleep, and then we wake up and do it all over again. It's like,
Oh.
okay.
But her eyes are bright and inquisitive, and because even when you held her up, she was like, "Ooh, look at all these things happening around me."
Yeah, she doesn't always have her eyes open, and she's kind of crying, so I should probably go soon and
Let
rest.
you go. Yeah, I need to eat lunch quick, and I need to go to work soon too. So, all right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. This was a really good book. Thank you, Karen. It was a great thing. It was, definitely going to reread again. Next book is going to be A Song for a New Day, Sarah Pinsker. I will post about when we're going to meet. We're just going to keep it pretty flexible for now.
Yeah.
Life is crazy. Let's just chill for a little bit. All right. Until next time. Thank you guys so much. See you guys later. Bye.
Bye.